Hello there, everyone, and a very happy Friday to you today, and welcome to another live here at Arden Creative Studio. It's wonderful to be with you again on a very snowy Friday afternoon here in northern Germany, and I hope you are doing well wherever you're watching from and staying cozy and hopefully having a little bit of time to yourself to do some crafting. So today I have something a little bit different for us. Rather than a traditional scrapbook page, I wanted to take us through a little folio project, which can incorporate photos, or it can also incorporate perhaps some other memorabilia, quotes, notes, observations, journaling, you name it. It's a super simple little project to do, and it also allows for some really fun techniques. And so that's what I want to talk about today. So, I think what we can do is start with the construction of the basis of our folio. It's really, really easy. And then what I'd like to do is go into some altering techniques. And we can have a look at some different ways to alter our papers and our embellishments with paint, with alcohol markers, and with ink pads. So lots of fun ways that we can add a little bit of color and distressing to our projects. Hi, Avril, nice to see you. And I'm going to have the comments going here. Fiona is backstage with us. Hopefully, between the two of us, we won't miss any of your comments or questions, but please do post in the chat if you'd like to add to the conversation because we do keep up with those and would love to have you engage. So welcome, welcome everybody as you're coming. Alrighty, so I think what I'm going to do, I'll flash through this just one more time, turning the pages here. And then I am going to angle down my camera and we can take a look and get into our demo. And we can talk a little bit too about the various products that I'm working with, the papers and the embellishments. And then what I will do is also share some altering samplers with you. So I've got some for some of our vellum and then also a little sampler here for our PET tape. So I'm using two very exciting, new to me embellishments. But first, let's talk about our folio and how it's put together. So I'm starting with a file folder, believe it or not, and I'm going to show you that and how to cut that down in just a second, but that's what the basis is for my folder. So I've got the reverse side here, which I've still got some additional room on there. I can continue to do some altering. But then when you're looking at this, I've got my front cover. I have my inside two pages here. I've got some more paper, some ephemera. I've got some of that PET tape and a little sticker, and then also some vellum, as well as a little tiny photo. I'll talk about the cutting die I used for this, and then continuing on to the next pages. This, by the way, is my mother as a probably probably 2-year-old on her tricycle in the garden. And then here she is a couple of years later as a young lady. And again, like I've got some more space on the back here, so I can really take this into some fun different directions. Alrighty, so let's start with our supplies. Let's talk about what I'm using to create this beautiful little folio. Now I'm starting with the collection that's called Vintage Makers Essentials. So I've got the Essentials paper pad. You can see the beautiful designs here. And what I really like is how everything is coordinated, working really nicely into double page spreads for my scrapbook pages. But also you can see you can mix and match between any of these combinations. So I'll just flip through here quite quickly and we can admire these gorgeous pages. Background papers, you've also got like this sheet here, I think is really useful because of course you can just simply trim these apart with your paper trimmer. And you can see how easy they are to incorporate into your projects, regardless of the size. So we've got some nice cutouts in there, beautiful all over patterned papers. I like this one too with this really cool text on it, overlapping text. Then you've also got this sheet in here, which I really like because these are all die cut punch outs. So you can pop these elements right out. And lots of great, really usable words, perfect for vintage or heritage pages like the memories, adventure, and so on, but also some words and sentiments that can be used for contemporary pages too. On the reverse side, they're all blank, so you can add your own sentiments in there. There's another sheet with some die cut punch outs in here too. These will just pop right out. Also really versatile. And you've got blanks on the other side. And some more of these pattern papers. This is one of my favorites, and I haven't used it yet only because I like it so much. I just want to look at it. So good thing there's two. And then this sheet, which I think is also really gorgeous, and then coming to our sheet music at the back. So all total, you've got 2 sheets each, so you've got 24 sheets all total. Just gorgeous designs. So that's the Vintage Makers Essentials paper pad, 6x8. And then, of course, you've got coordinating laser cuts to go along here. I'm also using these. You've got the beautiful foliage. You also have lots of words and sentiments and little accent marks in there too. And the vellum ephemera. Now we're going to talk a lot about this, and that's one of the samplers that I have to show you. These are absolutely beautiful and just so easy to use as accents. We'll talk about how to glue them down, which is always the question with vellum, and also how you can alter them a little bit. So package of the vellum ephemera, and then I am also using the Makers Series Postage Essentials 1 dies. And these are what I'm using to create my, my photo die, as well as using some of those little accents in there too. These are a lot of fun. And last but not least, I've also got our PET tape that coordinates. And this is so cool. It comes on a really huge roll. I'll have to double check, or maybe Fiona can put in the comments how much you get on this roll, but it is just like, it seems like an endless roll of kiss cut acetate elements, and they're all self-adhesive, so stickers, but these can also be altered too, and I will show you some examples of that. But let me wind this up again so I can put it off to the side. These are something new to me, and I absolutely love them. Just a lot of fun to work with. All righty, so let's start first and foremost with the construction of our folio. Hi, Barry. Oh, Barry is saying it's 15 feet or 5 meters. Thank you very much. 5 meters. Okay, that clears it up. Thanks, guys. And I think I saw Susan had jumped into the conversation too. It's nice to see you, Susan. Thanks for joining us. So I'm starting with the basis of my folio. I'm just working with a file folder. Now, this is one that I got at my office supply store, the kind that you can probably find at a stationery shop, or probably even the grocery store in the US. And this is an A4 size, or slightly larger than 8.5 by 11. So what I've done is simply trimmed it down, cut it in half, and that's going to give me, for this one, a 6-inch tall folder. So I've got the fold in the center. You can see where the main crease is here, and then all of our little scoring creases in there as well. So what I'm going to do is simply fold in each long end to meet the center. I'm going to roll this in here to meet the center, and then I'm going to score this down. A bone folder really does come in handy for things like this, and this will get you a nice, crisp fold. And then I'm going to fold in the other side, also to meet the center. And score that. It could not be easier. And then I can fold it up like so. So now I've got my little accordion style folio. It can go horizontally, it can go vertically. You've got a lot of options with this, which is a lot of fun too. Now, one thing I decided to do with my folio is add some distressing using paint. So you can see on the back here, when I open this up to the back, you can see all of that kind of white scuffing on there. This is just white acrylic paint. And this, I think, is a really fun way to coordinate with some of the light and dark tones, those warm and cool tones in the pattern papers. And it also helps to sort of, tone this down a little bit from this kind of manila color. Now I'm working onto my craft mat. So I've got a non-stick, easy cleanup surface. And I'm just gonna grab some white acrylic paint. This is an opaque paint. This happens to be from Paper Artsy. And I don't need very much, and I don't need to cover my my manila. I want to have some of that manila showing through here. So I've just got a little bit here on my craft mat, and I'm going to open this up as much as I can here, as much as space will allow for right now. And to apply my paint, I'm using not a brush, but a brayer. Hi, Fifi. Nice for you to join us. Great to see you. And a brayer is going to give me a nice, even application, but it's also going to give me a pretty thin application. So I'm just going to roll this out onto my craft mat, and then I'm going to roll it onto my folio. My brayer's got a little, he's protesting today. He's got a little bit of a squeak to him. And again, I'm not trying to cover the entire piece. I'm just trying to get some edging around here. And because I'm not putting on very much, this is also going to dry pretty quickly. So actually this is, it's not soaking wet on there. Okay, let's get a little bit more. This is one of my favorite ways to use paint, is with a brayer. Even one that's making so much noise. And I'm not going all over the entire surface, because I know I'm going to add pattern paper there in the middle, so I don't have to. Okay. And let's come to the back here. Now I can come back and add more if I want to, but I really like this sort of easily distressed look. You can see just the difference between the painted section and the unpainted section. So I'm just going to let this fully dry. I'll set this off to the side over here on my other messy work surface. And then to clean this up, you can just grab either a damp cloth, baby wipe. Super simple to clean this up and kind of get this back to a working surface. Same thing for the brayer. You can rinse it off, or you can use a damp cloth or a baby wipe to clean this off. Or you can leave it on there for a long time, which is what I usually do. And once it dries on there, it's fine. It'll just be another layer on your brayer. Okay, so I've got that drying over here. And the next thing I want to do is add in some of my patterned papers. So from my folio, let's have a look here. My folio, when it's folded, measures 4.5 inches across by 6 inches up top to bottom. So for my patterned papers, what I want to do is trim them so that I still have some of this background area showing, but that it sits in here really nicely and still gives me some room for embellishments. So I've trimmed my patterned papers to be 5.5 by 4 inches. And so from here, all I need to do is just decide on my patterned papers, which ones I want to have on the front, which ones I want to have on the inside. And of course, because all of those pattern papers go together so easily, it's just a matter of choosing which ones you want to have going on which pages. But what I've done for the papers that I've got on every page, you'll notice that I've got some shading around here. And this is done with my dye-based ink pad. So I thought we could take a look at that process too. You can see it around here. this nice aged, kind of a yellowish tinge, and then the definition around the outside edges. And this is done with a dye-based ink pad. I'm using the Hunky Dory Prism ink pads, and this is in mustard. I just thought that color worked really nicely with the colors in the pattern paper collection. And what I like about the Hunky Dory ink pads is that they come in a lot of colors. They're a nice small size. They're really affordable, and also, very important, if I hold this like so, I think you can see that the ink pad, so the pad with the that's actually containing the ink, is sitting up off of this plastic base, which just means that it's easier, I find, when you're doing any kind of direct to paper inking, rather than ink pads that are really recessed into the plastic container. Those work too, but this I just find to be really easy to use. I have a blending brush, and I'm just going to pick up some of the color from the ink pad onto the brush. Also still working onto my craft mat. I'm going to hold down my paper and then simply blend from the craft mat onto the paper. So rather than plonking my brush right onto that cardstock, I'm going to blend from the craft mat onto the surface. And I think you can already see that definition on there. You can see that really pretty aging effect. You can add as much or as little as you want. Start with a light touch, because you can always add more, but you can't erase it. You can't take it off. So from here, I'm just going around all four sides, and this is what I did on all of those 5.5 by 4 inch pieces of pattern paper. It's just a really beautiful shading technique and super simple to do too, really easy. Okay, so that's as much as I'm going to do on this one. And I think you can see this. Now let me bring in a piece of white cardstock, and I think you can really see the difference between the two of those. Then from here, what I've also done, taking that same mustard ink pad, and I'm going to add even more definition around here by just running the ink pad along the edge of that cardstock. And again, I think you can see that definition there. You can hold this perpendicular to your cardstock, or you can angle it even more toward the surface of the cardstock. And just kind of shuffle that on there. And you've got some instant aging. And it just complements the colors and the tones in this pattern paper so beautifully. I mean, the pattern paper is gorgeous. You don't have to do a whole lot to it, but if you are feeling in the mood to add a little bit of altering to your papers, this is a great way to do it in a way that is quick, easy, won't take long to dry, and you're ready to go. And I think these are also pretty effective in terms of color and style. So that's what I've done on all of those papers that I've done in here. And what I like to do when I'm creating a folio like this is to kind of lay out all of the elements before I glue them down into the folio itself. So like so. Now let me bring back in my other piece here that I've done. It's already dry, so I can just go ahead and add this right in here. And you can see how nicely those go together. Okay, so let's talk about some other parts of our folio now that we've got the basics down, and have a look at some of the other elements that I've combined in here. Let's start with the cover, because the cover has our pattern paper here, inked, edged, and glued straight down. I also have some of our vellum incorporated into this design too. So let's talk about the vellum and how you can alter that as well. Before I glued down my patterned paper, I added these little portions here. Now these are from the vellum collection, the vellum ephemera set, and they simply are glued right down onto the front of the folio, and then my patterned paper is glued on top. This is actually one piece, and I cut it in half because I knew that I just wanted the edges to show around the outside there. So let's talk about vellum and vellum embellishments. These are just so much fun to work with and so much fun to play with, and they're beautiful. Now, vellum is one of those materials it's been around in the crafting world, scrapbooking world for a while. It just adds another nice little bit of color and style to our projects and another layer of dimension in here as well. Because it is kind of see-through, but when it's patterned, you've got these beautiful designs and this rich color on here. It does really add something nice to your projects. In fact, you could just simply pop this down here and add a message, and you have a beautiful card ready to go. One question, though, is how to glue it, because although they're patterned and they're not as transparent as, for example, an acetate cutout, they are transparent enough where you do kind of want to think carefully about the types of adhesive that you're using. Liquid glue is probably not going to work as well as a glue stick or what I would consider a dry adhesive. Not working well in the sense that it wouldn't stick together, but because this is slightly translucent, you do want to minimize any glue showing through. I like to use a glue stick for this. And what I would recommend, step one, exercise restraint. I think a lot of times when people get glue in their hands or adhesive in their hands, they over glue. I know I can be guilty of this too. And you don't need a whole lot. And I'm concentrating the application of the glue where the color is darkest. So I'm not coating the whole thing, but I'm just hitting those darker areas of our design. And then I'm just going to pop this down and we're ready to go. So I don't have any wet glue that's kind of squeezing out from underneath, but this is on and ready to go. Just have a look at how gorgeous that goes. Those two go together. I think it's just absolutely beautiful. And like I said, you could have a card front ready to go if you just add maybe a small message on here. So that's how to glue down your vellum elements. Now, what if you want to perhaps add a little bit of color to these? Well, they do have some color to them already, most of these elements, but some of them have some room for personalization. I'm going to hold this up to the camera because I want you to see the butterflies here. So this portion is a vellum ephemera piece, but I've added some brown onto the butterflies and also onto this postmark. And I'm using alcohol markers for this. Really easy process to do. While I have this up here, I'm going to point out too that the sharing memories, is also a vellum ephemera piece, and that's just been glued straight down. But let's talk about altering our ephemera and how you can do that. Your alcohol markers will work beautifully for this, and alcohol markers, you can get them from lots of different manufacturers. I've got them from just about everywhere. And all you need to do is color directly onto your vellum ephemera piece. So let's see, let me grab a butterfly here. And I'll color this onto some white so that you can see this. Now you can color onto the front. You can also color onto the back. And it just depends on how bright or vivid you want your markers to be. Let's see, this is a graphite alcohol marker in brown. And working onto the back, I'll just scribble this color on here. And you can, of course, go with some brighter tones if you want to. I was keeping in with the vintage colors of this collection. And I'll just color along here. I'm not worried too much about staying in those lines because when I flip this over, you can see where I've colored back in this area that I've got some nice coloring on here. There's the back of that. I didn't have to be too precise. Let's see what it will look like if I color on top of the design though. Let's see. You may have a little bit more intensity, or maybe not. Well, yeah, I can see a little bit more intensity from being so close to it. Let's see how you guys see it. Scribble this in. It's so easy to use too. And because the alcohol markers will dry on top of this non-porous surface, I don't have to worry about a lengthy dry time. There's a bit of a difference. I can see it, that this is definitely more vibrant. This is a little bit more muted. Both of those options work really nicely though. So why do you need to use an alcohol marker versus a dye-based marker? Well, it's because the vellum is a non-porous surface, like a plastic type of material. So you do want to make sure that the markers that you're using specifically say that they are alcohol markers. So front or back, you can color on those as you wish. Let me show you my sampler here. We can talk a little bit more about some other things that you can do with those ephemera pieces. So let's start up here at the top. Here I've glued down, using my glue stick, one of these beautiful circular images. Is it a compass? Is it a clock? Is it both? There are no hands in the middle, so I'm not sure. I'm just using it as a really useful circular element that balances out really nicely from our rub-on, which is underneath, has that kind of splatter effect on here. So I've simply applied my rub-on to my white cardstock and then glued this vellum element on top. And I love that you're getting this muted section back here, but then also some of this beautiful color around the outside edge. Then let's save this one for last. Let's go down here and take a look at this portion. This is the vellum, this brown section here with the text on it, glued down onto some pattern paper, and then I stenciled on top with a stencil and some texture paste. If I angle it, maybe you can see that texture on there. You can feel the texture of it. Absolutely beautiful. And I really love, again, how easily you can create the layers on there. Here's my butterfly with my alcohol markers. And I think I did color the alcohol markers directly on top of the butterfly here. And it's just in certain sections of the butterfly wings. I also used alcohol ink. And in this case, I put the alcohol ink on the back side of the leaf. And let me show you, here's one of the leaves. This is what it looks like originally. So between the two of those, and I used some blue alcohol ink here and just droppered it onto the back side, but have a look how different those two look. You can also, of course, use a Sharpie directly onto your vellum. So Sharpies will come, if you're labeling stuff for kids, you know about the fat end of the Sharpie, but you may not know that some Sharpies also have a fine tip on the other end. So that's what I use to write in on this ephemera piece. And then I've also applied a rub-on directly on top. So underneath or on top, your vellum and your rub-ons can be perfect partners for creating layers. Now this section here in the front, this is the vellum portion, this botanical. On top, I've got some stamping, which I heat embossed with clear embossing powder. Now, you can stamp directly on top with just ink. You need to have a StazOn ink pad or one that is designed to work with non-porous materials. My StazOn ink pad, I realized, was bone dry, and it was on I think it was on a Sunday. No possibility of me getting a new ink pad or a re-inker. So I thought, well, I'll put some clear embossing powder on top, and that will heat set a dye-based ink or pigment-based ink. So you do need to be careful when you're using a heat tool with non-porous materials, but it can be done. So just exercise caution, but you can get a really cool effect with that too. So lots of things that you can do with those vellum embellishments, in addition to simply coloring them with your alcohol markers. So there's just a lot of possibility there. Now I will point out too, they're gorgeous on their own, so you don't have to add in a whole lot more, but if you have the inkling, you can definitely explore there. So that's what I've got going on here on the front of my cover. I also have another little accent piece up here, which is my PET tape accent, and we'll talk about those as well. I want to show you a couple of other examples there too. Let's flip over to the next couple of pages. As I mentioned, this is one of the cutouts from the collection too, and I've trimmed this down a little bit. I think originally it's not hugely, there's not a huge difference in there, but I did trim this down. So don't feel like you're restrained to the size that the cutouts come in. You can trim those down even more. And I've got some more white paint going around the outside edge here. So I'll show you my very technical process for doing this. Super simple, may get a little bit messy. All you need to do is dip your finger into some of this paint and then run it along the edge. Now, if you don't want to get your hands all painty, you can use a piece of a sponge, or you could, of course, use a brush there too. This is just the quickest, easiest way for me to go. Adding your paint around there. And that, again, will give you a little bit of distressing along the edges. Let's see, I think I got overzealous there. I can take down a little bit of that color. Super easy to do. And again, once this dries, and my tip for letting it dry is to pop it on top of something where it can sit and all of those sides can dry easily. I'm going to move those over here. That's what I've done here on my cutout. It's also what I've done here on this tag. So remember, this is a tag from the paper pack collection too. I have some of the laser cut leaves in here. I love these because they just add a really nice kind of curvature around some of those straight lines. It's a very linear project with the rectangular shapes. It's straight lines, straight lines, straight lines. So it's nice to have a little bit of foliage in there to soften it. This is one of our PET tape butterflies. So let's have another look at our very long roll of PET tape. So here are just some of the images. I'll flatten this down and you can see I've already peeled off a couple of them, but from mushrooms to the lockets to the foliage and clocks, butterflies, and then here's our little hanger. I guess you could call it a little hanger. And this is great for holding elements together. So let's see, I'm going to grab this and maybe a larger piece. Put these two together and simply secure them down like so. So you can use these to create flaps, simply hold things down together. And again, it creates some really nice definition and dimension on your projects. Let me show you some other examples of things that you can do with that PET tape. Got another little sampler element here for us to look at. And again, you can do your stamping and heat embossing. So I've simply stamped directly onto one of the PET tape elements. So the beautiful foliage on here, not colored, but I like the black and white effect on there. As we saw with the rub-ons with the vellum, you can do the same type of thing with your PET tape elements. So that's what I've got here. The map in the background is the rub-on. I've got one where the rub-on is on top and one where the PET tape, this ticket, is placed on top. You can layer the elements together. So simply 1, 2, 3, and you've got some cool dimension on there as well. You can die cut them. Of course, you want to put the tape onto another sturdier surface, so onto some cardstock or paper, so that it will run smoothly through your die cutting machine. Here again, using those little accents as attachments. So these will hold on together. You can hold them in place like so. You can color not only with your alcohol markers, but with other types of markers too. And I had a white pit marker, which I colored on the back of the mushroom and then put it onto that black cardstock. Here again, My Sharpie comes into comes into use for labeling again. Now you can do some painting as well with your PET tape elements. So here's the original. I use some of this blue paint on the back, and that will give you kind of a patina effect. Now, when you put your paint on the back of your image, it won't be sticky anymore. So then you need to use your glue stick to secure it down in place. It is a little bit fiddly because you have to hold it down while you're painting it, but I think the results are worth it. More texture paste in here as well. And again, you've got some nice texture. What you can do is put that texture paste and stencil it right on top of your PET tape image. You can also then scrape off some of that texture paste so that it gives you a smooth effect with your image, but then the rest is kind of overlapping in there. Alcohol inks are always going to be a favorite with this. Again, adding that onto the front or the back. And then the alcohol markers, we've got some more examples on here, and I'll demo that for us quickly. I think do I have one more back here? Oh, I do. I also incorporated some embossing powder on the back of an image. I've got some white glitter here, and I've got some perfect pearls. Again, another really fine powdery substance on the reverse side of all of those elements. So you can do so much with these. I just think they're a lot of fun. Let's have a look at our butterfly, and let's do some quick coloring with one of our butterflies here. Let me find my cardstock. I'll just grab a piece here and take off one of the butterflies. Where did my butterfly go? Here we are. Pull this off. So these are kiss cut, meaning that you've got a little bit of a border around the edges there, but essentially it's going to handle just like a sticker. And I'll place this down. Any one of my colors will work, but in keeping with the tones of the background paper, I'm going to use another brown here. And simply color this in. And I'm going directly on top of the acetate, but I'm still able to see that beautiful accenting and the illustration on here. So my marker is not obliterating any of the design. Ta-da, could not be easier. Now the butterfly was beautiful just as a black and clear image, but I really like having the option to personalize that a little bit and to coordinate that. Now, another nice thing that you can do with these elements is also use them to attach things. And I've got, let me see if I can reach this. Got a piece over here, which is another one of the butterflies. And one of the laser cut ephemera pieces. So I can just use the butterfly to help tack down that ephemera piece or that laser cut piece here. And I would just add a little bit of glue on the back side to secure it down. Super simple to do. Let me bring back in my little folio here. And you can see I've got this overlapping onto my sentiment with that paint going around the outside edge. And then I've got my photo on the other side. So as I mentioned, here's my mom on her little tricycle in the garden. This is the original photo, not the original, but the copy of the photo. And I wanted only to capture her in here. And so that's where I thought it would be fun to use our cutting dies. So again, this is the Postage Essentials die set. And this is just the perfect size for creating a little frame, right like so, and then running it through the die cutting machine. And I've got the outside edge here too to give me this really pretty postage style with that decal edge. Just love that. And that's layered up onto one of the tags from the collection. And then, as I mentioned earlier, we've got some of that foliage, and I've got another bit of ephemera underneath. I'm using a little piece of the vellum as the tag topper here. And I've also got some accents up at the top here that I want to show you. So this portion is one of the laser ephemera or the vellum ephemera pieces. And I colored the leaves with a green alcohol marker. And then I've got on top of it a smaller little, I call them flags. I'm not sure if that's the correct name. But again, one of these little accent pieces here from the die set. That's just from pattern paper layered up there. On the next double page spread, I've got another photo of my mom. This one is also a larger photo that I figured, we've got a lot of background on here, and I wanted just to trim her out from the center. So I've got her right down here, and she's framed within a frame that's printed onto this sheet of pattern paper. So I thought that worked really nicely to inset that photo and then overlap with one of the die cut elements. That's popped up on foam tape. Got my laser cut here. I've got another little bit of vellum accenting on the side. Again, another one of our little tag die cuts. Butterfly popped up on foam tape. And then I've got my other postage mark, the smaller one or the square one, with pattern paper and my laser cut accents in there, die cut elements, and then also a sentiment down at the bottom. Now, as I mentioned earlier, with all of the space on here, I've got some room that I could continue on the back side. I think this would make a fantastic gift for someone. I think this would be a lot of fun if you wanted to do photos maybe over a certain event. You could also, of course, swap out the color palette entirely and have a really fun, colorful folio too, incorporating photos or not. The other thing I would point out too, if you didn't want to use your photos in here, I think this would be a lot of fun. Just incorporating some quotes, some sentiments, inspiration. It would make a great gift for a friend as well. And super simple to do as we've seen. But it's also a lot of fun to add in some of our distressing techniques, especially when we're working with pattern papers and embellishments that just lend themselves really nicely to this type of distressing and color coordinating. So I hope you have enjoyed a look at how you can take a humble file folder, trim it down, and add in some gorgeous papers and embellishments, cutting dies, and maybe a technique or two to add your own personal style to your project. I'm going to flip up the camera so that we can see each other again. I appreciate everybody who has joined in today. Hopefully we got a chance to check all of your comments as you've been posting in. And if you've got any further comments or questions, please do pop those down into the chat. And even if you're watching later, we do read those comments afterwards. So we make sure that we can answer all of your questions and comments too. Hopefully you've had a good afternoon of crafting some inspiration, and I do appreciate you joining me today. Susan says, I'm going to use this idea for a graduation folio. That's a great idea. Graduation folio and a wedding folio. Thank you for the inspiration. You're welcome, Susan. Thank you for joining us today. Thanks, Avril, for joining, and a wonderful weekend to everybody. Thanks, Fiona, for being backstage and catching all of those comments as they come in. It's been a real pleasure, and we will be back with you again, not next week, but the week after. We have a brand new collection. I can't wait to show it to you. It's just absolutely stunning, and I've got some pieces over on my work surface right now. So I'm going to have a really fun weekend, and I hope you all will too. Thanks, Fifi, for joining us too. It was nice to have you come along, and hope to see you all again in a couple